Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Rani Samuel, clinical psychologist and author. And today I want to talk to you about healing your broken heart. I have spent quite a few years working in cardiology. So I've worked when people have come in to be diagnosed, and I've also worked with people that have had cardiac surgery and we're on their healing journey. Psychologists see many conditions that mimic or imitate a heart attack. So very often people come into the cardiology ward thinking they're having a heart attack, but they're actually not. And they'll come in with severe chest pain, shortness of breath, they'll have palpitations and sweating. And we find they're not having a heart attack, but in fact, they are having an anxiety attack. And that's when we do a proper assessment and we unfold the treatment plan. But it's really interesting that there's something in cardiology called the broken heart syndrome. It's actually a Japanese word, and it's called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. And this was a syndrome that was discussed in Japan, and Takotsubo refers to the pot by which octopus is caught, and it resembles the heart. And the contraction of that is what happens during heartbreak, where someone has undergone a severe stress and a severe loss and has this, and it looks like a real broken heart. I once treated a couple and their family, and the father was in the end stage of life, and he was sick for a very long time, and he took seriously ill, was admitted to the ward, and he died on the Monday. I remember this very clearly, their daughter messaging me and saying the father has died. And the mother, who was a few years younger, was in very good health, suddenly deteriorated, and she died on the Thursday. So this couple, who were married for 50 years, and I'm not sure if she had this particular condition, but it certainly looked like severe heartbreak from losing her soulmate of 50 years. So that was 2 deaths in 1 week, and it was very, very sad for that entire family. So heartbreak can also be very, very physical. What does it mean to be heartbroken or to have a broken heart? The word heartbreak and broken comes from the Greek word santribo. So to look at the word broken, and this means to be crushed, to be shattered, to be bruised, to be destroyed. And I think emotionally, many of us can identify with that when we have suffered trauma, such as the end of an important relationship. There can be a loss of a parent, or there can be parental conflict. There can be death, whether it is something you've expected in someone you love, or it can be a sudden death. It could be a job loss. It is about every kind of loss that brings heartbreak. It can also be disappointed. Some of you may have had particular dreams for a child, and you find that they've walked the other way. It's your typical prodigal son story. You may have dreams of what they would become in this world, but they've taken an alternative path, and you can see the difficult outcome of that path. But heartbreak happens when there's rejection, when there's abandonment, and when there's loss. And I think that is part of the human journey, and most people can identify with that. Why is heartbreak so devastating? Because Lots of people undergo physical pain, but emotional pain is quite different, and it's very, very common. I don't know anybody who has not suffered heartbreak, but people spend a lot of time trying to hide the heartbreak because it's easier to actually say, I'm going for cardiac surgery, than to say, I have a broken heart. So a lot of the pain and a lot of suffering comes from concealing the heartbreak. And yet it is so common, but people try to not talk about it and pretend that everything is normal. Let us now talk about what happens when you ignore or deny the heartbreak. One of the reasons people don't like speaking about heartbreak is because it reminds them of previous losses that they have encountered. So if you are dealing with the loss of a romantic relationship, it resurrects all the other losses that are unresolved and that once again call for attention. I recently sat down with a client who was going through a divorce, and she had engaged in this marriage much to the the distress of her parents, because they did not select this particular partner for her. They wouldn't have selected this particular partner, but she was quite impulsive, engaged in this relationship, and married very quickly. And from the first month of this particular marriage, there were problems. And it didn't matter how much money you threw towards the problems, it never resolved. And fast forward 2 years later, this couple was undergoing a divorce. But she didn't like being alone. She was a very attractive woman, and she really could not stand the loneliness of being without this marriage. And the divorce went quite quickly, and she immediately engaged in another relationship. And once again made the mistake of getting married too soon. Well, this time it was not a huge wedding, but it was still a commitment. It was still legally being married. And now that relationship was failing. So this is what happens when you don't process the grief, when you don't process the brokenheartedness of what you are going through. You weaken the emotional infrastructure and substructure of your life. And you become prone to more and more brokenness because you operate from a place of brokenness. And what healing does is we go back into the foundations, heal every broken relationship, heal every broken heart that you suffered. And very often we find the first broken heart was from dealing often with an immature parent. And even that has to be dealt with. This is how you clean up. This is how, it's almost doing spring cleaning of your heart. And we lay new foundations. And then you would have a much healthier relationship going forward. So where should you begin the healing process? With my patients, we look at various levels. First, they need a safe space, and that they find in therapy, because they need to grieve, they need to speak openly, they need to show their despair to a person that won't be overwhelmed by that despair. A place of no pretense and no masking, that we're not bypassing the brokenness. Then we look at a lot of the physical care that goes on. They need to eat and sleep and hydrate, because all this suffers when you are going through a broken heart. I often encourage them to put their thoughts in a place outside their mind. What do I mean by that? Whether they open a note on their phones and just start writing messages that they will never send. It's almost like we need the container to stop this loop in their minds, to stop this rumination and memories circling around and around. And many of them would do that and find it extremely helpful. I remember a young woman who lost her father, and it was a very unresolved loss because the family was separated at that point in time. And she began writing notes to her father, whom she loved, but she was not really speaking to him at the end. And she wrote all these notes until she did not have to write them anymore. So there's a lot of crying that happens in heartbreak, but I want you to know the amount of tears that you cry is no indication of the length or depth of grief. Some people don't cry a lot. Some people will just shed a tear, but understand there's a tsunami going on inside. So while tears bring great relief, not everyone gets to do that easily. I remember I had a patient in hospital, and she was quite blindsided because she was diagnosed with a severe medical condition, and her husband did not want to support her or do this walk of healing with her. He wanted a divorce because he said, I didn't sign up for this. And that blindsided her. And I remember for most of the hospital stay, she would have this little square box of tissues, carry it around everywhere she went, and she would cry and cry and cry. Eventually, when she did get discharged and come to my office, she would bring her own box of tissues because that's how much of grief and tears there were in her. And one day she came without the box, and that's when we knew the broken heart was truly healing. What does the Bible say about being brokenhearted and about healing the brokenhearted? This seems to be a very important theme in the entire biblical stories of leaders, of people, of ordinary people. No one was immune from brokenheartedness then, and no one is immune now. And many people think they could take a verse from the Bible, such as He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And this is true, and this is found in the Psalms. But if you said it over and over, it's not going to be a balm, and it's not going to be a bandage to you. Verses are only effective within the intimate confines of a relationship with God. Yes, you can use them. Yes, you can read them, but that's not sufficient. Grow the relationship. Rest in that relationship. Know that healing is your divine inheritance. And then that particular type of verse has meaning and has power, not in isolation to a relationship with God. The other verse I like a lot is found in Psalm 73:26. Let me read it. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. So a lot of people will tell me, my heart is failing. It's like a cardiac patient. They say, their heart is failing. But when you have a broken heart, you feel like your heart is failing. This brokenness, you feel you don't have the strength to continue. And it's interesting, this verse says, but God is the strength of my heart. It's like God knows your heart because God made your heart and knows the emotions associated with your heart and will build scaffolding around it, will make sure that you have the strength required to navigate the season of brokenheartedness. So I want to tell you that I see lots of people struggling with it. When people have a broken heart, they also lose their dreams and vision of the future, especially if the broken heart was tied into a relationship, whether a parent or with a child or a romantic relationship. Just understand that the journey of the broken heart is a very human journey. But in parallel, there's a spiritual journey underway. And that has by no means changed. Your destiny, your purpose, your calling, your gifts are all still intact. And that's on the divine plane. But very much in the human sense, you are struggling with these things in your body, in your mind. So don't give up. Understand that some things are intact. And you will find eventually, as your heart heals and your destiny continues despite your broken heart, they would merge. And as it is often said, your test in this area will become your testimony. So a broken heart has many hidden lessons, as much as it is not nice to go through, but you will find your destiny accelerates as you overcome the pain and challenges of a broken heart. So don't give up. Stand and navigate this heartache that you feel and watch as your destiny unfolds at a deeper level. Thank you for listening. I will see you next time.